Last time, our protagonist Kim Yi-won defeated the boss monster of a hidden dungeon. Hagan and his group arrive after the battle and he and Yuan make a bet over who beats the tutorial boss first and has the most CP, with Yuan to join Hagan's group if Hagan wins and Hagan to help Yuan just once when he asks for it if he wins. When Hagan sees the remaining time stopped, he asks Yuan what's happening and he explains that the island is actually a divine beast, with all the monsters in the hidden dungeon being parasites that torture its body. It was planning to go underwater so the parasites wouldn't be able to live in its body. Hagan left in shock at Yuan's knowledge, unsure if he should trust it since even Olympus didn't know this info. Whilst Yuan thinks back on Odin, who told him it wasn't that he hunted the boss in a week, but he stopped time from flowing. Yuan then walks off as he thinks they need to use this time effectively to grow stronger, so when time starts flowing again, they can end the tutorial. Elsewhere, the lackeys panic over the death of the parasites and the absence of the administrator who is dealing with Olympus. Whilst Yuan, back on the surface, hunts red orcs to the point that they run in fear of him. Yuan notices that time has started to flow again, so the lackeys must have resolved it and killing the parasite dragon again probably wouldn't work. Instead, he decides the 4 days they gained is enough and he's ready to finish the tutorial and enter the tower. On the mountain, those who are around level 20 or higher gather, ready to begin the final raid. Sung-yoon, Alador, and Yolche discuss mana control in the tower, and how those that don't are mostly residents of the tower. People like Yolche and Hagan who grew up in the tower but weren't chosen and obtained the system's blessings to become purebloods. Alador then drawing their attention to Yuan, who just arrived. Yuan looks at them and thinks the flow of mana has changed, so they must have leveled a fair bit. Hagan then greets Yuan, who is still without a team. Hagan determined to overcome the 7,000 point difference between them and kill the boss first. Yuan then heads straight for the dungeon entrance, with Hagan and his group on his tail. Yuan crashes into the boss room filled to the brim with various bloodlusted monsters. The others behind him slightly unnerved at their number, whilst Yuan, who knows where the boss commanding them is, pulls out his sword and activates the combo skill Colossal Fire Arcane Sword. He then launches into the air and crashes into the center of the horde, with a red orc pinned under him with his sword through its neck, whilst the members of Hagan's team look on astonished at his strength, Sung-yoon even saying he is more monster-like than their team leader. Ticked off by this, Hagan bursts forward himself, unwilling to lose to Yuan. He leaves a trail of lightning and destruction in his wake as he chases after him. The other main members of his group working together to break through the traps and monsters and catch up to the two. Yuan and Hagan then arrive at a grand door with a strange painting on it. Yuan enters quickly whilst Hagan, who is contemplating the painting, tries to get him to wait and go together but fails. When his team arrive, a massive gust of air and a loud noise erupt from the door. This shocks them, but their leader, who knows how strong the monster is, tells them, "Let's head in," with a concerned look. Inside, they find Yuan in front of a massive chain chimera as it roars and rampages behind cell bars. Hagan says to Yuan, so that's the final boss. However, Yuan remains silent at his comment. System messages then pop up and detail that someone can break the chimera's sealing crystal and it will become their familiar. They will pass the tutorial and earn additional CP according to the number of people they kill. Alador then comments that they have to hunt the chimera whilst protecting the crystal from people they're meant to trust. And Yolche adds that with only 10 people it shouldn't be hard, as she thinks only Yuan is as fast as the captain. Then, Yuan takes a step, and Hagan grabs him. He asks if he is betraying them and if he forgot their bet. However, Yuan says he will win the bet and be the one to end the tutorial. His words anger Hagan, who continues to question why. And Yuan says this is why he wanted to do things alone. He summons his sword from the inventory to Hagan's shock and launches it at the sealing crystal. The crystal shatters on impact as Hagan yells out his name. The chimera, now unsealed from its bonds, becomes Yuan's familiar and destroys its prison with a roar. Yuan, with the angry Hagan still grasping his shoulder, then orders the chimera to destroy a wall. The beast complies and destroys the wall, as Yuan tells them not to worry about the beast since he controls it and he'll have to fight another enemy now. He tells them a chimera is a monster created from other monsters and asks, so who made the chimera? Adding it's up to them if they want to help him as he walks into the hole in the wall. Hargon under Sung-yoon's question of what to do, declaring they will follow. They follow behind Yuan and the Chimera to find a long passageway that even Olympus didn't know of. Eventually, they enter the hidden boss room to the side of a workshop full of grotesque creations and failures, with the Chimera creator focused on his work in the center of the room. The Chimera creator turns to the intruders, surprised that someone came here instead of betraying the Chimera and taking its authority. The creator then singled out Hargon as the son of Zeus and says he'll be useful even if he's just a half-god, to the purebloods' fury. Yuan then reveals the creator is Dark Magician Child, a ranker who, after experimenting on participants of the 50th floor that he supervised, has lost all of his powers and must make tutorial bosses here for 1,000 years as punishment. Child questions how he knows about him, and Yuan points to his eyes as he says, "Do you remember?" with a mocking smile. Child then explodes in wrath at the sight of his eyes, and Yuan and Hargon utilize their fire and lightning to resist. Yuan and Hargon discuss his strength despite losing his powers, as Child rages at the bastard with the monkey's eyes. He sends forth his nightmarish monsters and screams at Yuan to answer why he has those eyes. Yuan declines to answer and says he can't let trash like him live, as his Chimera takes out a bunch of monsters. Hargon and his group then join the battle and face off against the creatures with their magic and skills. Whilst they take on the monsters, Yuan walks toward Child, who activates his skill, Dark Casket. The skill traps Yuan inside a dark coffin, and he mocks Yuan for underestimating him. However, Yuan destroys the skill with his immense strength. Yuan's enlarged hand reminds Child of Hercules, and he asks what's his relationship with Olympus. But Yuan ignores him and activates the skill Gigantification in his arms, whilst Child raises his staff and sends out dark streaks toward him. Yuan snatches them out of the air, but still finds himself in a 3-layered dark casket. Despite this, he smashes clean through it immediately and charges at Child, who sends poisonous green fangs at him with another skill. Yuan charges up a powerful strike as he destroys the venomous fangs and advances toward him. The Dark Magician, astonished at his strength, thinks even if he's Hercules' descendant, it should be impossible to break his skill like that. He then summons his strongest defensive skill, Ebony Thorn Wall, to trap Yuan once again. His gloating once again cuts short when cracks start to appear in the skill. He then strengthens the skill with more dark magic and smiles with a cold sweat when the banging from the inside stops. The skill then blows apart before his eyes, and Yuan emerges to grab and slam him into the ground. Yuan mounts him and lays blow after blow into his head as he thinks back on the words of Wukong and Hercules, who told him to be sure to fight the Chimera creator if he obtained both their skills. However, the bloodied and bruised creator just laughs maniacally as he is an immortal undead Chimera, thanks to his 1,000 years of dark magic experiments. However, with these eyes, Yuan can see everything anyway. Yuan using Cinder Eyes to see his weaknesses and tear his body apart as he confronts him for all those that died by his hands and eliminates the Chimera creator. With this, he obtains an unbelievable achievement and ends the tutorial. He levels up twice and increases the completion rate of the Heaven Slaying Star skill, which increases all his stats. He thinks this must mean every time the completion rate increases by 5%, his stats will increase by 1. Meanwhile, the Chimera monsters that were fighting the others collapse with the tutorial's end. Alador asks if anyone is hurt and quickly rushes to heal Yolche, who is seriously injured, whilst Hargon watches on silently in thought. Hargon and Yuan then leave the others to talk. Hargon says he won't question how he knows what he does, but someone is severely injured. He then presses Yuan over how he can risk their lives when he could have set a record without defeating the Chimera creator, and asks when will he be satisfied. Yuan wonders about this himself. He thinks back to the overwhelming power of the outer gods that saw many rankers die in order to catch just one of them, and yet no one knows how many there are. This being the reason he must continue to get stronger. Yuan answers, "I don't know," and tells Hargon what he's looking for is a team he can travel with, and that's why they can't form a team together. Yuan then turns to speak to the administrator behind them, which shocks Hargon that someone comparable to top rankers is here. The administrator expresses his annoyance with Olympus when Hargon introduces himself, but Yuan tells him to chill since he is innocent. The admin then rants about Yuan, who continues to make chaos for him, and Yuan tells him to hurry up and hand over his rewards. The admin pulls out his reward, a dark divine crystal, which is also known as a fragment of the Helm of Invisibility. The helm being one of the strongest items of Olympus that belonged to Hades of Olympus's big three. Yuan gladly accepts it as he needs it and already knows where the fragment of the trident is, the fragment of the lightning bolt being the main problem. The admin then says that everyone else will get rewards according to their CP and sends them out of the tutorial, as he tells them it might not be bad if they become the wave that shakes the core of the tower. The rankings showing Yuan first on 674,880 points, and Hagan and Yolche second and third respectively. Yuan obtaining 67,488 points and an additional 50,000 for breaking the record, as well as an unknown egg that appears in his inventory. Yuan then arrives on the first floor and checks his inventory, surprised to see the unknown egg. Hagan then appears beside him, and a system message informs them that this is the first floor outer region, the Meadow of Beginnings. The two then talk, with Yuan confirming that he won't be joining any of the guilds scouting here, and that if Hagan wants to find out the true colors of Olympus, he should find out for himself, since he won't believe him even if he tells him. Yuan then leaves alone, with only a wave as a goodbye, whilst Hagan tells him to register as a player so they can keep in touch and to be careful of jackals. Jackals are participants who gave up on the next floor and instead kill and loot new players in the Meadow of the Beginning. Their favorite prey being players yet to join a guild that are found during the period after the tutorial ends that they call the Time of Harvest. Yuan walks on his own and notes that they have already started stalking him. He grabs the dark divine crystal in his pocket and thinks the jackals are perfect to test his stealth skill. The boss of those trailing him then notices that he disappeared. The heads of 3 jackals fly into the air in the next moment. Caught off guard, the jackal boss pulls his weapon, unable to see or find the assailant, as more are cut down around him. The boss even fails to find anything with his skill Falcon Eyes, and is left astonished that a new player can use such a stealth skill. Yuan, having dealt with the rest, then grabs and slams the boss into the ground. He asks him if he knows where a guy named Mu Woon Chon is. The boss asking back how he knows that person, which gives Yuan a smile as he has hit the jackpot. Later that day, Yuan sits alone on the balcony of a cafe in the middle area. He thinks about how nice it is that he can acquire the intel he needs so quickly thanks to his revival. Yuan pulls out the dark divine crystal and thinks that whilst it's powerful, it's not an ultimate stealth like the helm. He decides that if he can craft the powerful crystal into an infinity gem, stealth won't be a problem. Yuan then giving a broad smile as he thinks of the Ajasi or old man he'll see again someday. The next day, Yuan uses the player kit to finally register as a player. He then puts the kit away and heads towards a smithy. Inside the store full of weapons is steamy like a sauna. Then a short and muscular man appears from the back. The man is surprised to see the pyromancy robe and assumes this person isn't from this area. Yuan instead looks at a weapon and states he came to the right place. Yuan then picks up the weapon and notes that they are all failed weapons. He asks if he is Volcro to the now seemingly maddened blacksmith. Volcro asks where he came from, but Yuan just says not to be wary. He pulls out his player kit that shows he is in fact a player of the first floor, which manages to quell some of his suspicion. Yuan then moves on and pulls out the dark divine crystal as he says he's here to commission an item. The old man takes a closer look and notes it's an uncrafted stone with a bead of sweat forming on his cheek. Yuan asks if it is possible and he answers that it is. The old man in shock when Yuan tells him he got it as a tutorial reward. Volcro tells him he can only refine it now since he'll need to get more adequate materials to withstand the stone's power. He then asks why Yuan would entrust this to him after seeing his weapons. However, Yuan picks up the sword from before that actually has perfect center of gravity and comments that he can ruin the handle and edges but old habits die hard, and that it seems he forgot to mess with the balance. The old man then bursts into laughter at his words and decides to accept the job on the sole condition that he tells no one where it was refined or that it was refined. Yuan, of course, happy to accept. The next day at breakfast, Yuan thinks of how it will take about 10 days before Volcro is done. Then, Hagan takes the seat opposite him and sits down. He found Yuan through his connections on the first floor, which Yuan doesn't think strange since Olympus is the most influential on this floor. The two talk about his player kit and number and how Hargon will go up in 5 days after working on his team's teamwork, to which Yuan then asks him to do a job with him to exterminate the jackals. Hargon replies that it will be hard with just them and his team, but Yuan cuts him off saying it'll be just them. He says it's too early to explain in detail, but if he doesn't want to, he'll go alone. Hargon quickly accepts and shovels down the food in front of him, then getting up to go since he needs to make time for them to meet. Yuan watches him leave, thinking he must really like his team since he's putting in so much effort. He then looks to a man hidden under a cloak and asks what business he has with him. The man reveals himself to be Agamemnon of Olympus and introduces himself. Yuan asks why he didn't greet Hargon, who is a descendant of Zeus, as he takes a seat at the table. He says that he couldn't, as his objective was to meet him, who placed first in the tutorial by an immense difference. He adds that he's heard Yuan and Hargon are friends, but instead compliments Yuan for not teaming with him and says he should form a team that fits his level, as he invites him to come under his lord, Ares of Olympus. Finishing his spiel, he ends Ares is different from that lowly half-blood whose mother is unknown. He goes on to praise the high rank of Ares' heritage as the son of Zeus and Hera, and claims it's better to be with them than some unknown. Yuan then interrupts his babble and shots his coffee, then getting up to leave as he states he has no plans to be part of any place. Yuan confronts Agamemnon for spouting such words about Hargon, and declares, "I won't be siding with you lowly people either." After Yuan leaves, the still simmering Agamemnon is greeted by a subordinate. The elitist Olympian orders him to gather as many jackals as they can and to kill Kim Yuan when their collections are done in 2 days. 2 days later, Yuan and Hargon walk through the streets as they head towards someone's place. Hargon, looking at Yuan's strange eyes, wonders if he is the descendant of that monkey. After all, he heard what Child said back then, the great sage Sun Wukong, who became a high ranker in under 100 years. But then again, Yuan also used fire just like Apollo in gigantism that Hercules only obtained after hunting 10,000 giants. He wonders if he is a part of the giant clan, and what if that's why he didn't join Olympus. Yuan then snaps Hargon from his thoughts as they have arrived. The two enter the building to the apology of a man who claims they are closed. However, Yuan just says the name Mu Woon Chon, and the man immediately sprints for it. Yuan chases after him and grabs his collar. The man in return pulls out a kunai and attempts to slash Yuan, who slams him headfirst into the ground to the disbelief of the pinned man. Yuan explains to Hargon that he is a player from the martial realm that gave up on climbing the tower and has rabies. Hargon, observing the pathetic looking man, says that it's hard to believe that he is the king of the jackals just cause he ran. However, Yuan knows better and shows him the poison on the knife that is melting the floor as they speak. The captured man's face and voice then changing as he asks where he heard this. The man tries to threaten them with who's backing him before noticing Hargon's hair and eye color. Hargon then remembers how Yuan told him earlier to respond properly. He realizes this is what he meant and activates his lightning skill. The man seeing this comments that it's true Olympus betrayed them. Yuan takes the chance to press further and gets him to admit he's working with Agamemnon, whilst Hargon keeps his silence. Yuan continues his lies and pretends they have Zeus's backing, so if he wants the jackals to continue and maybe even get a role in Olympus, he should side with them instead of Agamemnon, who doesn't even serve one of the big three. The man gives in to Yuan's temptation as Hargon watches on, internally in turmoil. With him on their side now, Yuan tells him to gather all jackals at a specific location tomorrow at midnight and leaves with Hargon. Outside, the fuming Hargon demands that Yuan explain what just happened. However, Yuan says it's just as he saw. Olympus has been working with the jackals. Hargon tries to deny that the great Olympus would do such things, but Yuan tells him this is the true colors of Olympus and leaves him to think it over. The next day, Yuan waits alone at the edge of the town, when Hargon finally appears to join him, having settled his thoughts. He declares whilst clenching his fist in determination that if the jackals are Olympus's dirty laundry, then he will throw it out himself. At the meeting place located in some cave, the thousands of jackals gather and wait. The king of the jackals, Mu-Wun-Chon, then steps up to address them and announces that they have a new mission that will see them soar to the skies. Wun-Chon then introduces the crowd to their new backers and bows toward the masked men who are our two boys. He then offers them a bundle of Asgard's currency worth 1,000 points a bill. Yuan takes the cash and smiles at the fact that with so many gathered, he really completely switched sides. Yuan then snaps his fingers as he says goodbye, with a colossal flame then erupting and engulfing everyone present. The fire able to spread so quickly thanks to the oil they spread beforehand, soaked into the ground, and the scentless powder to hide the smell. Yuan and Hagon then dive into the crowd of burning jackals and begin the massacre. Wun-Chon charges at Yuan for betraying him, but when he meets his eyes, his body freezes and Yuan cuts him down with a single slash, ending him and the jackals for good. If you enjoyed the vid, like, sub, and comment below. Peace.